We were joined by the former U.S. ambassador to Germany and former acting director of national intelligence, Ric Grenell. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Appreciate it. So you had an interview with Greg Kelly. Of course, Newsmax's Greg Kelly. You said that John Bolton, who wrote the book, was upset that Trump wants to shake up how things are done in Washington. So what do you think of the allegations that Mr. Bolton makes in his book?
Look, I think we no longer have a Republican versus Democrat fight. We have a Washington versus the rest of America fight. Clearly, if someone is not willing to testify under oath, but they're willing to testify under a book deal, it's problematic.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now, having been the acting director of national intelligence, I'm kind of curious whether you think that Bolton broke the law with this book. Was there classified information? Were there things that you have seen that should not or were not legally released?
Look, I haven't read the book. I haven't seen the full copy of the book, but I have seen the excerpt. And in the excerpts, it's clear that there are nuggets of classified information, and there very well could be a huge problem with this. So I leave it to DOJ and the DOJ officials. Attorney General Barr is fully capable, and I know that their team is looking at this, and they will make those determinations.
What about the reception that John Bolton had within the administration? Because we know that he was kind of part of previous administrations, always been a little on the outside, if you will, kind of a neocon that was considered a hawk. So did he ever fit in, to your knowledge, within the administration itself?
But President Trump, I think, liked to see a variety of viewpoint presented to him. I have been in plenty of meetings with him where he goes around and he asks and he really probes and he asks prosecutorial type questions of people. It is a process that can be uncomfortable for people who are used to the normal political briefings, because the president acts like a businessman. He wants to get to the bottom of it. He wants to understand what's going on. What I will say is, at the end of the day, anyone who worked for the president has to understand that it's the president's policies that were on the ballot in November of 2016. He's the one that won, and he's the one that created the vision. Anyone who tries to think that they can impact President Trump and change his views because they have a certain viewpoint, that person is wrong. And I think what happened with John is that he entered the administration with a very clear understanding of his policies, but a not very clear understanding of what Trump's policies were. Anyone who watches President Trump as candidate Trump would realize he was trying to end wars, not cause any conflict. He ran against the Iraq War and the mess that was created after the Iraq War. President Trump really took on the Republican foreign policy establishment. People need to understand that. John Bolton is the epitome of the Republican foreign policy establishment and didn't recognize that he was working for somebody different.
Yeah, and he was known to be rigid. That's one of the reasons he was kind of on the outs, if you will, even among neocons. So with tensions, let me ask you this about China. We've seen what's developing there. A lot of folks feel that we're in a Cold War with them. At this point, we have 3 carriers in the Pacific. Where do you think this is headed with China?
Look, I've been a diplomat my whole life, so I always hope that we're able to solve everything diplomatically, and that's my focus. And I think the fact of the matter is that we've got a serious problem with China because of COVID-19. The evidence shows that it originated in China, and the Chinese secret system is really the problem. We all need to come together, Republicans and Democrats, and understand that this COVID-19, this Chinese virus, has devastated our economy. It has really shaken the core of policymakers to figure out the supply chain system. We can never be in the same situation that we were before. So I'd like to see us come together with Europeans and with Americans and be able to say that the blame for this problem, for this devastation to our economy, is clearly China, and we have to adjust our policies and make sure that this never happens again.
What do you think the consequence should be? I've seen it proposed. Obviously, we have tariffs now that were not connected to this. There's some, Stephen Moore, for instance, has suggested there should be reparations imposed upon China. Because since it's a Cold War, not a hot war, we may be limited as far as what we do. So what kinds of tools do you think we could use against them?
Well, I think that there's a whole variety of tools, and I'm going to leave it to the president to come up with what he feels is best. But make no mistake, let me just say this. President Trump knows that China is at fault here. He's a businessman. He knows how to get things done. He knows how to use the leverage of the United States government. I've never seen a president that's willing to use the full force and leverage of the U.S. government like this president. He's moved the Chinese before when it came to North Korea, for instance. He's been able to really maneuver and move on the Iran issue, the very real concern that we have that Iran is still pursuing a nuclear weapon, and we've been able to implement sanctions largely with anything that touches the U.S. government because of President Trump. He knows how to do non-traditional policy making, and that's exactly what we need right now when it comes to a post-COVID world and the Chinese.
Let's shift focus to Venezuela for a second. The president has told Axios that he believes that Guaido, the president there, is weak, yet he would be interested or would be open to meeting with him. If he did that, do you think it would be a good idea? And what do you think he could have accomplished there?
Look, first of all, no one should be surprised that the president doesn't want conflict, that he's trying to be strong. I think that there's actually this dual approach by President Trump, which is really developing into the Trump Doctrine, which is put very tough economic sanctions and other pressure on countries like North Korea and Iran and Venezuela, but also offer a hand to say, if you change your behavior, if you're willing to go a different route, that we will welcome that change and we'll try to get you into the international community where responsible countries can make responsible decisions. And so what I like about President Trump is that he's very tough. He keeps the sanctions on. He keeps the pressure on these countries, but he's also willing to give them an off-ramp.
Yeah, let's talk about what's going on between Serbia and Bosnia about Kosovo. There are some talks going on the White House is involved in. Will they be fruitful, and what do you think would be a useful outcome there?
Look, as the president's special envoy for Kosovo-Serbia negotiations, we decided to get involved because there's been a long history of lots of different experts, so-called experts, that have been pushing on just political issues, largely ignoring the economic issues. When I started discussing these issues with the people of Kosovo and the business community in Kosovo, the people of Serbia and the business community, what was clear is that they wanted economic development. They wanted jobs for young people. They wanted hope. And so what we tried to do is immediately figure out, how do you get the economies to grow? We did an airline deal, the first ever in 21 years, a flight between Pristina and Belgrade. That's not quite implemented yet, but we have the agreement and we're working on it. The same with the railway agreement, which would open up the borders to commerce, and a large border agreement with motor traffic. What we're trying to do is concentrate on the economic situation, to create a little mini Shenzhen zone. We think that's a very good idea, and we think if you can create jobs in the region, if you can bring capitalism and force the parties to get along economically and commercially, then the political issues would be the second step. The political issues are clearly the responsibility of the Europeans. I've been working very closely with the National Security Advisor in France and the National Security Advisor in Germany. They know exactly that the plan, which is the United States wants to concentrate on the economic first steps, bring European and American businesses to the region. And then I think the Europeans will have more success on the political side. We're trying to be helpful and trying to shift the paradigm, because after 20 years, we still haven't seen enough progress.
Yeah. Do you worry at all about the influence Russia may have in that region? And ultimately, how important do you think it is that the president get an agreement in that region between those two forces?
I think we're always concerned about the propaganda that Russia pushes and the destabilization policies. We're always looking at that. What I want to be able to do is to bring capitalism and free markets to the region, because the people of the region deserve to have a future. You know, young people right now are leaving and going to other places. They're going to Germany, they're going to Poland, they're going to Hungary, where there are jobs. And so what we have to be able to do is help grow those economies. In the best way to do that is to have capitalism flourish and to be able to remove the barriers that are prohibiting the small companies and the medium-sized companies growing in the region. And also, I will say, large European and large American companies have largely ignored Kosovo and Serbia because of the perceived conflict. So we want to get rid of that perceived conflict so that we can have these companies begin to grow and provide economic stability for the region.
Mr. Grenell, thank you so much for joining us, sir. Ric Grenell, former U.S. ambassador to Germany and former acting director of national intelligence. Thank you very much, sir.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing news channel, now in 65 million homes. Get Newsmax TV on all the major cable systems or go to NewsmaxTV.com and click on the Find Newsmax tab to locate us. Remember, Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.